This podcast is brought to you by the Albany Public Library main branch and the generosity of listeners like you. What is a podcast? God, Daddy, these people talk as much as you do. Razib Khan's Unsupervised Learning.
Thanks for listening to the ungated version of the Unsupervised Learning podcast. If you want to read some essays on some of these topics, please check out razib.substack.com. Again, that's razib.substack.com. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Today on Unsupervised Learning, I am talking with my friend David van Ofwegen. As you could, I think, tell, his name has a van in it, V-A-N. He is Dutch. And this is the first long conversation I'm going to be having with David in 21 years. So I met David, I think it was the summer of 2003. We met on a bus trip, actually. We were very young back then. And we just talked about all sorts of things. He was from the Netherlands, and I was very curious about the Netherlands and what was going on. Now, this was right after, well, it was a couple of years after 9/11. It was a couple of years after Pim Fortyun's assassination. Some of you older listeners will know who that person is. So we were talking about all the different things relating to Europe and Islamicization and whatnot. Now, I wanted to get his take. He had some very strong opinions at the time. I actually ended up talking about this in a group chat where it was a e-list. It was a different thing. The technology was different. And then the editor of the American Conservative at the time wanted me to write an article about my conversation with David, and I did. And that article came out September 8th of 2003. I'm just checking it right now. It's called Old Europe's Obit. You guys can look it up. But so that was the product of that conversation. And, we had like a lot of opinions, ideas, expectations. And 21 years later, as we are recording, David, I am hearing the Netherlands is in the news here in the States. Do you know why?
Yes, we've really put ourselves on the map. We have marauding gangs, hunting for Jews. This is Holland. What a wonderful place. Classic traditional sort of refuge for people who were persecuted for their religion. It's how we have sort of made a 180. We used to have all these brilliant minds, philosophers like René Descartes, who moved to Holland to escape persecution, and now they're hunting Jews in the streets. It's it's really.
I mean, we had some pessimistic thoughts, I think, at the time, but I really wasn't imagining this, though. So can you tell the listener, David? And by the way, I should say, just by way of introduction, you're a philosophy graduate, you teach philosophy, and you live in Thailand, and you've lived in Thailand for a while now, and we're going to get to that. We're going to talk about Thailand and what's like living there, what Southeast Asia is like. But I want to start the conversation kind of rolling back to the Netherlands. You still visit. I know you have family there. We're Facebook friends, so I know. Tell me, what is the social context of this? It had something to do with a soccer or a football match, as you would say. And then there was a Telegram group about hunting the Jews. Like, this is what I know.
Yeah, well, this kind of ties into the thing that you mentioned earlier when we met on the bus, when we were talking about the murder of Pim Fortyun, the Dutch politician at the time, who was, I think, 3 weeks out from winning an absolute majority in the elections, coming from nowhere. And he ran on a platform of warning against the dangers of Islamization of society, intolerance towards women, homosexuals, and Jews. What we see now is kind of 21 years later, exactly what he said. You have an increasingly large population of people who have ideals and values that lead to things like this. I mean, the hatred of Jews is people tend to they like to explain in a way. They say, yeah, it's the situation in Gaza, and yeah, they were football supporters, so it was just about the match. Of course it isn't. Of course it isn't. If you've paid attention at all for the last 10, 15 years, like 80% of all anti-Semitic incidents in Europe, in France, in Holland, in Germany, are perpetrated by Muslims, because the very foundation of the religion is Muhammad's struggle against the Jews. When that's your point of departure, then of course the Jews are the enemy. It's like saying if someone's religion was built on like watching the Avengers, you know, then obviously the bad guys in the Avengers are going to be their model for evil. And in case of Islam, the model of evil is the lying, cheating Jew that you cannot trust and you have to, get rid of. So what we see now is simply a result of that. We've reached sort of a critical mass, especially in the big cities like Amsterdam and The Hague. Rotterdam is an even better example, where you have so many youths who, with impunity, can do whatever they want. And they saw this opportunity. Suddenly there's a very large group of Jews, and given the political situation now in Israel, they have a convenient excuse. They can say, yes, we care for the Palestinian people, so we're just gonna take out some knives and bats, and we're just gonna hunt the Jews. Anyone could have seen this coming. Really, it's not a huge surprise.
Yeah, like we did talk about demographics, 21 years ago, a fair amount. So I guess, just looking it up right now, with the census that you guys have, about 80% of people in the Netherlands are ethnic Dutch, right? Which has declined since you were growing up there, I guess. But only about 5% are still Muslim. So is this so if you go to the Netherlands, I know you have a Dutch Bible Belt, where there's a bunch of like traditionalist
Yes, yes.
Calvinists, and then in the South you have a lot of Catholics. So are there still large parts of the Netherlands though where it's still very traditional and historic? I'll put it that way.
Yeah, mostly outside of the big cities. There's a huge contrast between the urbanized population and outside of that. If you go to the center of Den Haag, which is the city where I'm from, you very clearly see the signs of you basically you can walk around for a while and you won't hear any Dutch. This is a telltale sign. When you don't hear your own language, you're probably in a place
What,
where you have,
and so what language are they speaking? Turkish, Arabic, what?
yes, Turkish, Arabic, or simply more within Europe, immigration from Eastern Europe, things like that. In Amsterdam, it's slightly different. In Amsterdam, you'll hear English as sort of the lingua franca because you've got so many expats and people. Like if you go to a bar in Amsterdam nowadays, I went back a couple of years ago, and you try to order a beer in Dutch, they won't understand you. They'll ask you in English, what is it, do you want a beer? It's very odd to be in your own country and not be able to communicate in Dutch. That's it's a funny thing.
That's I mean, like in America, like when that happens, people get really pissed off. I gotta say, but the Dutch people mostly know English. Your language is very close to English, so I guess that's okay, right?
Close to English, I would. Well, it's more of a Germanic language. It's closer to German than to English. But yeah, of course, Dutch people all speak English. We learn English in school. Our big secret, along with the Scandinavian countries, is that we subtitle our TV and our films rather than have have them dubbed. And yeah, therefore, all Dutch people speak English nowadays. So it's not a problem. It's just weird. It shouldn't be like that. And that's and then when people do speak Dutch, what I've noticed also the younger generations when I go back, the sort of standard Dutch accent has shifted, has morphed. They especially the accent of younger kids, like it has absorbed some of the more like Arabic way of pronouncing things. Like there used to be this mostly Moroccan immigrants who moved from Morocco or were even born here, but they speak with a kind of different like accent. And this has become so popularized because they're perceived to be cool and trendy, and all the girls like them and such, that now even Dutch kids who were just have no traces of that at all start to speak like that. Like I saw this interview the other day with a Dutch footballer called Robin van Persie. Played for I think Man United for a while, and he sounds like a little immigrant kid. It's very funny. Like the standard Dutch accent has, especially of the youth, has changed. So this is also what I hear when I go back. I'm like, huh, you don't sound like kids sounded when I went to school.
All right. Well, okay. So that to me reminds me a little bit of like how Ebonics and Black English is kind of cool in the USA. Is that a good analogy?
Yes, it's really, and it's also pushed by the media as being cool because, of course, there's a lot of like DI stuff going on when you watch like commercials or something that's not a representation of the real, like you just mentioned. Like if you look at the numbers, it's actually quite a small percentage. But then when you look at how it's represented in the media, it's suddenly a huge percentage. So that it's also being pushed as something to strive towards. Yeah.
I see. So I mean, the media, like, so I think of an analogy here as the UK, which is 80% still white British, but the media and the demographics of London are such that it gives a representation of diversity in the country that's not equal to the diversity that there really is, which is, frankly, there's a lot less. In the U.S., the UK would be an extremely white state, a very white state. Actually, I remember when I went to London about 15 years ago, it reminded me a lot of New York City, except it was much, much whiter, which, I guess to Europeans that's weird to say, but, New York City is about 25% white. London's about 50% white. You know what I'm saying? So it definitely, you notice that sort of difference. So you're saying like the language itself, like the colloquial language itself, is changing. Like what other cultural changes have you noticed?
Cultural changes that I've noticed. Um, hmm, when I go back to Holland, yeah, there's just a general vibe of hostility. It's like we used to have another example would be national holidays. We used to have this national holiday called Sinterklaas, which is based, that's actually what Santa Claus sort of is derived from originally. So it's in Holland, it's this Catholic saint who comes from Turkey every year in November on a steamboat, and he arrives and he has black helpers. Yeah, maybe you've seen a skit like when I lived in the U.S. when I went to grad school. They had this little bit, I think, on the Colbert Show or something, where they made fun of this. So yeah, there is this Catholic saint all dressed up with a long white beard, and he has these black helpers who come and they give treats and gifts to children. And these black helpers are played by uh, white Dutch people, usually in blackface, or you would call it. See, I find the word blackface again to be a bit difficult to apply here because the word blackface in American context refers to a racist practice, while in Holland, of course, that connotation doesn't exist. You're just trying to be this character, or, and this is very important, or we call them Zwarte Piet or Black Pete, or they were simply played by black Dutch people who then didn't have to put on any makeup because we have, the former colonies in the Dutch Caribbean and Suriname and such. So they could simply play as Zwarte Piet without any makeup, which was fine. And yeah, this is, of course, a holiday that was always more celebrated more than Christmas in my youth. Christmas was seen sort of as a foreign holiday. The whole Christmas tree, Santa Claus stuff. We didn't really do that. That was like we perceived that as sort of like that's the American way of doing things. We have our own. And then on December 5th, Sinterklaas goes back to Spain, which is where he lives. Yeah, it's a funny story. And then if you've been naughty, he will knock on your door on the evening of December 5th, and then he will put you in his bag, the zak van Sinterklaas, and then he will take you back to Spain. If you've not been naughty, then you will find the same bag in front of your door, but it'll be filled with gifts and candy and such. So this holiday nowadays it doesn't even exist anymore. Within the short span of 5 years, it's been cancelled, for lack of a better word, because there's blackface. People import American racial issues on a society that never had them. When I was young, I was in school and I had a couple of black kids and a couple of Indian kids and some Asian kids in my school, and I wasn't even aware. No one even knew what race was or meant. Like, we really had like a sort of race colorblind society when I was growing up. It just wasn't something that you thought about or mentioned. They were just people. And we've imported this polarized sort of everything is made into like a race baiting thing from America with American terms instead of Dutch terms, where now suddenly Sinterklaas is racist because it's blackface, and where suddenly, this is another amazing example of the use of language to change people's thought. Like Heidegger said, Sprache is das Haus des Seins, like language is the home of being. Like, we have a word for Caucasian people in Dutch. It's the blanc. Blanc means white, like as in white skin. And it's always been like that. And only like in the last 4 years, newspapers, of course, this is not like an organic change, this is all top-down stuff, said, no, we cannot use our old word blanc anymore. We're going to use the English word white, and then translated literally to Dutch, which is wit, which we only use for like white paint. We don't use it for skin color. But now all the major newspaper and the news, like TV news, they use the word wit to indicate people with a Caucasian, like a white, like in English. So this insidious sort of warping of language in order to sort of, I don't know, make one big part of your population seem evil, because wit, it has a negative connotation. It's a bad thing. So it's taking all this race war bullshit and imposing it on a society that never thought about these things. And one result is there's no more Sinterklaas, because there were riots. People would go and they would beat up anyone who celebrated Sinterklaas. And then people just caved in. They said, okay, we'll take those Zwarte Piet, and instead of doing blackface, we'll just have a few black stripes on their face, not to offend. Of course, there's no one to offend. No one is offended by this except for a very, very small group of people who come from America and want us to have, race wars. And then now, this year, I look at the news and I find that even the Zwarte Piet with the black stripes are no longer allowed, because, of course, they move the goalposts all the time. And basically now there have been like lawsuits against any cities or that celebrate Sinterklaas. So it's over now. That would be a major, coming back to what has changed culturally. Well, that's one.
Well, so I know about the Black Pete controversy because I swear to God, I mean, I remember it was in the media almost every year, at least in this century. In the American media, they would talk about Black Pete in the Netherlands, and often they would interview a Black American who lives in Amsterdam who was offended, and it was just like a yearly story that I would see. And I don't watch cable TV or anything like that, but I haven't seen it on the internet actually since 2020 at all. And so now you're helping me connect the dots here. The reason that controversy, that story doesn't occur anymore, is the Dutch have just backed off.
Yes, it's on the way out.
Okay, so we were talking about Muslim immigrants and anti-Semitism, and this is coming from mass immigration. But then you bring up the fact that in Amsterdam, you go to a bar and English only basically, uh, and now you're talking about American race relations and racial paradigm, even changing your language to kind of an Americanized form. Um, it's it sounds like the Netherlands. It sounds like Dutch identity is being kind of it's like in a vice grip from the bottom and the top, like American cultural imperialism, and then as well as kind of like a urban underclass, immigrant, often Muslim underclass that's also transforming the culture.
Yeah, it's basically an assault from all sides. Of course, all orchestrated from by government from the top. It's not an organic change, but and not a grassroots sort of thing. It's yeah. How do we find as many avenues, as many paths to abolishing your own culture and identity? And yeah, like you said, it can come from legal immigration, it can come from language, it can come from culture, from religion. There's yeah, lots of ways to do it. Even in university, I went to university in Holland. I did my undergrad studies there in Leiden University, which is one of the major ones, and then went to the US for grad school. But of course, when I studied in Holland, all the undergrad programs were in Dutch. And now what I hear from people who've stayed or still are active in academics in Holland, they say that most of the undergrad programs now are in English. Like it's very hard to find like a fully Dutch program, which is kind of weird. Like you can't go to higher education in your own language in your own country anymore. Again, this sort
Uh,
of thing, we need to somehow kill Dutch culture or uniqueness and turn it into this sort of globalized, sludge, colorless mix of it's yeah, it's kind of
well,
disheartening. Like people always talk about diversity and plurality, and it's the very same people that are always on about this who actually want to get rid of diversity, because diversity means lots of places with their own individual culture.
yeah, I mean, it kind of reminds me of Switzerland a little bit, and it's more extreme than Switzerland if this actually happens. But in Switzerland they have Swiss German, which they speak. It's their dialect, I guess. But then they also have Standard German, and so I think like most of the newspapers, most of the media is in Standard German in Switzerland. But people will speak in dialect with each other, and so you could have a situation where eventually the television stations and the newspapers and the textbooks, they're all in English, but Dutch is maintained as a language of the home and in the kitchen and just among the families, among the, dwindling ethnic majority. I don't know.
Yeah, it's yeah, it's a very weird situation, and you can only wonder like where we would be in 50 years. Like, is it gonna be like a, I don't know, Gaelic in Ireland or something, or where's this going? Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe though, what's going to have to happen then is they're going to have to mandate courses in Dutch in school so that people know Dutch.
Yeah, they have to do like these language preservation initiatives, which is ridiculous, because if they hadn't been actively trying to destroy it, you wouldn't have to preserve it. It's really, yeah.
Uh, now you got maybe people could go to the Dutch Bible Belt. People still would speak Dutch there natively, on the street, just like going to the Gaelic areas of Western Ireland.
Yeah, you can have these little Dutch towns that become like tourist hotspots. It's like, oh, look, people are still Dutch over here. That's so cute. Let's take some selfies with them. Yeah, this is, yeah.
I do wonder, pulling back from the specifics. Netherlands is the European Union, which is it's it's attempting to be kind of a quasi nation, United States of Europe. It has all these regional cultures. On the other hand, economies of scale are a thing, and English is probably the closest that they have to a lingua franca. Some nations like France obviously have a top down imposition of their native language, and also there's a lot of people that speak French. It's going to take a while to wear away the French. But Netherlands, like Dutch is not an international language; it's a local language, and so languages like Dutch, Danish, you know, maybe even Finnish eventually. Uh, who knows what their future could be, right? In this globalized, semi-globalized world.
Yeah, and I'm also guilty of this. I mean, I live in Thailand. I have been outside. Like, I left Holland after the murder of Pim Fortyun. That was sort of the writing on the wall. I was like, okay, I'm gonna get out of Dodge. So lived in the U.S. in Hawaii for like 4 years. Then moved to Thailand. I've been here now 16, 17 years. And my daughter, for example, she's 3 now, and I don't speak Dutch with her, and I don't teach her Dutch because we're never going to go back. And like you said, it's a regional language that nobody speaks. It's completely useless, really, on a global perspective. And I would rather have her speak good English, being able to go to international schools and just be advantaged in her further education. Um, so yeah, she speaks Thai with her mom, and then English with me exclusively. You have rules, you don't mix. It's better to have one language coming from one person, etc. And yeah, people ask me why not Dutch? I mean, you are Dutch. Why don't you speak Dutch with your daughter? And I say, yeah, why? What's what good could that possibly do? Maybe later when her grandparents talk to her who are not as comfortable with English, they can speak Dutch to her and have Dutch be like a third language, which she can then speak, not fluently, but be all right in. But I'd rather have English be her first language, which she is completely fluent in. And yeah, of course. So I'm also guilty of that, of course, with the caveat that I live in Thailand, so I'm allowed not to speak Dutch. If I lived in Holland, of course, the situation would be very different.
Yeah, yeah, and so I mean that's actually a good segue. I know. So basically, we met 21 years ago, and then after that, we emailed a little bit, and somehow we were in each other's address books. I remember when Google Wave or something came online. We both
Yeah.
connected on that. Then we connected on Facebook, and now we're like connected a little bit on X. So this is kind of a situation where we've kept track of each other over all these years, and so I have seen that you moved to the Netherlands, and by the way, I do have to say, yeah, this not a big surprise. My 3 kids do not know Bengali. I don't know. Yeah, I don't see the point. I'm not gonna lie. It's like also like there's gonna be a lot of Bengali speakers in the future, unlike Dutch. So there's it's like the 7th or 8th most spoken language in the world. But I don't really anticipate that they're gonna go back to Bangladesh or visit West Bengal ever. So I'm there with you. And they're actually in well, I mean, I'm not gonna say what language. They are in a European language immersion school, so uh, it's not Dutch,
No,
but
no, I expect it to be. Yeah, yeah.
so they speak English and another European language is what I was gonna say. But in any case, so yeah, you've been in Thailand for a while, and seen your life there with your wife on Facebook, and eventually your daughter. So I know this is a thing. I know Westerners, usually men, go to Thailand and they live there, they settle there. And Thailand is, I've never been to Thailand. Um, so Thailand is, I think, like, it's kind of in a gray zone between developed and developing country is my impression. It's got like it has a pretty dynamic economy around Bangkok. It has a large ethnic Chinese community that is extremely economically active. So it's not third world as such, but it's definitely hasn't reach the levels of say Japan or South Korea, right? So I guess like talk to me about Thailand. What's it like living
Yeah.
there? It seems where do you live in Thailand? I don't actually remember if you live in or around Bangkok or not, or Chiang Mai or what. Just tell me about like the lay of the land there.
Yeah, well, I mean, um, further your assessment of Thai, the status of the Thai economy, I can say pretty confidently that I think in many ways the Thai economy is more developed than that in of European countries. And this sounds like a bit of a controversial take, but yeah, my parents, they just moved to Thailand like half a year ago, and I lived in Bangkok for 12 years. I taught at university there, and then moved to like teaching at the Swiss school for a while. But basically, the level of development in Bangkok surpasses that of Holland. Like my parents would tell me every time, yeah, I tried to go shopping and I couldn't. And then I said, well, where's the biggest shopping mall in Den Haag? Well, there isn't really. There's one new one which they built at the edge of town, which is quite big and it's nice. And then I say, well, that's great. So you're going to take like the Sky Train there, or you're going to take a subway? No, we don't have that. And you know, every time I see signs of decay or stagnation, just in uh, internet, for example. How is your internet? Yeah, it's kind of slow, doesn't work that well. And here, everything is super cheap and glass fiber everywhere. I feel that Thailand has not just caught up, but actually surpassed Holland in terms of how advanced the economy is. Like basically all basic needs, electricity, clean water, safety, cleanliness. I really don't see any aspect where people would say, "Oh, Thailand, they still got some catching up to do." No, they really haven't. I mean, yes, if you compare it, like you said, to Korea or Japan, that's another matter. I mean, Japan, I love it. Been there many times, lived there for a while, and I would say, yeah, Japan might be still even slightly ahead of Thailand, but then that's because Japan is even way more ahead of Europe. I find Europe in many ways to be seriously lagging behind. Um, and yeah, so is it Thailand a third world country? No, Thailand is definitely not, and things are just a lot easier to get done. Um, Bangkok, just the amount of wealth on display is staggering. All the skyscrapers, rooftop bars, restaurants, a very healthy, large middle class. And even if no poverty, no beggars, to go to any big European city or in America, that's one thing Razib talking about when we met. I would think we were taking like a Greyhound somewhere from the Northwest down to San Francisco or something. Uh,
Yeah.
I remember this was 20 years ago. It's probably worse now. I was in Seattle, and downtown, and it was just a dump. There was just like trash everywhere, beggars, bums, like Jesus, this is a third world country. And then you go to LA and you get out of the Greyhound bus station and you're like, this is the ghetto. I got to watch out. This is like what? And that doesn't exist in Thailand. It doesn't. So
Yeah, it's worst. I can confirm that though. The West Coast cities, there's various reasons. We don't need to get into this on this podcast, but you came like at actually an okay time for urban America. There was a period, between 2000 and 2015 when stuff was cleaned up, and then progressive DAs and mayors and governors unleashed urban chaos on us. So yeah, that was actually like a relatively calm time. And people say that about the U.S. Like we have a lot of inequality, we have a lot of wealth, we have a lot of public squalor as well. So we'll own that. It's interesting what you say. I just looked up the per capita GDP and PPP, and honestly, the Netherlands on paper is much higher than Thailand. But what you're saying is, whatever the statistics are, the Netherlands and some of these European societies are, maybe they're a little sclerotic. They're just not functioning and providing for people the way you believe a society that's supposedly developed should.
right, yeah, the government funds are either grossly misallocated, or there are other factors that, like the cost of living, which you can. I know it's PPP, so it sort of should be like adjusted for cost of living. But yeah, I mean, look at things like home ownership rates or something like that. This is another thing in Thailand. Like, the to explain about Thailand, the way that Thailand works is, most of the economy is Bangkok. This is very centralized. That's where all the money is being made, and then you have the provinces around them. course, a few other big cities like Chiang Mai, and then Phuket for all the tourism, and then maybe Khon Kaen, and and basically in the big northeast is sort of like the poor areas where all the workers, the laborers come from and such. But then even if you go to Easttown nowadays, it's very developed, and even the poor people, like poor in Thailand is very different from poor in Europe or America. In America and Europe, when you're poor, you live in a shitty little rundown apartment, and there are people like dealing crack outside your door. But here, poor means that you have an acre of land and a house somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and you don't pay property taxes, and you don't pay anything, barely anything for electricity and water costs. And you can always go back there and you have enough to eat. Poor, yeah, it's just a tricky concept. Like poor in Holland is if you make, 800, if you make $1,000 a month, you're poor. Your life sucks. You can never go out to eat. You can never do anything. Your electricity bills are through the roof because, wars in Ukraine and such. You know, yeah, I think there might be a little bit of manipulation or at least suggestion going on in sort of the main narrative about rich and poor. When you actually go to Asia or other countries that are considered to be worse off than the West, you find off that people aren't. Maybe we're putting the West on a bit of a pedestal when we shouldn't.
All
Yeah.
right. So let's talk about and like to be fair to Thailand, or you're not the only one that says things like this. In terms of Bangkok, you could get everything, do anything. It's a modern city. It's a world city. Maybe it might not be Singapore, but it's not that different. So, just put that out there that I have heard other people say these sorts of things. Let's talk a little about the culture. You're talking about, the Netherlands. The language itself is changing, and globalization and America having a huge effect. Thailand's a monarchy. It's had a few coups. It seems like it's overwhelmingly Buddhist. Um, and so what is the situation in terms of, let's say, the cultural self confidence or cultural self awareness, self consciousness? Is Americanization? Because when I talk to British people, they say it's more extreme than in the Netherlands. But when I talk to British people, they basically their whole culture is being Americanized. And people in other European countries where people speak a lot of English, their culture is being Americanized. So, for example, the French is actually less. The French are actually less because they speak less English than, say, the Scandinavians, obviously. So, what's going on in Thailand? Tell me about it.
Yeah, Thailand, it's like forces of globalization or Americanization, which basically the two sort of amount to the same. Um, they can't take hold that well because the education system is so poor. So this is sort of like a double-edged, sword thing in the sense that the poor education system is a feature, not a bug of the Thai economy. Because Thai economy can remain competitive and the cost of living can remain low because the education system is so bad. Really, if you look at, you can Google it, look at like even within Asia, like the average like performance of students after finishing high school, like Thailand is just the worst, both in terms of English and I think also other subjects. Maybe math would be an exception, but yeah, it's really bad. And I've taught at Thai schools. I've seen it from the inside, both on the university level as well as regular schools. It is just terrible. No one knows what they're doing. There are no expectations. It's all, yeah, it's terrible. But again, this is a feature, not a bug. They could easily improve on this because they have the resources and the development, and there are smart people up top. But they don't do this because people who are used, who can do nothing and know nothing, they cannot demand, a high pay. So minimum wage is still very low, which allows the rest of the economy to function. Cheap labor, hotels, factories, anything basically. So, but yeah, the other side of this is that because the education system is so bad, to keep the economy afloat, you can't Americanize a country where no one speaks a word of English and no one knows. Like, for example, I've had Thai friends who like finished university here, like not maybe one of the top universities, but just like a common one. And you give them a map of the world and you say, "Where's Thailand?" and they don't know. This is actually I've had this happen, or where's Europe? Or you say, when was the Second World War? And then they don't know. There's
Oh
just
yeah,
this
okay. Like that just sounds like they're kind of retarded. I mean, I don't know that. How can you not know where your own country is on the map?
yeah, it's just no one ever taught them, and they've just been occupied with other stuff. They just don't care. It's not that they're retarded. I mean, I'm sure that genetically, Thai people are not like, have a lower IQ than any others, or you might want to, do some studies into this. But I think it's just the education system that just completely failed them, or gave them what they want. Yeah, it's shocking coming from the West. At least when I grew up, maybe it's different now in Holland. I also read that the sort of median test result scores in Holland over the 20 years have like plummeted. So yeah, it's going on there as well. But yeah, here in Thailand, it's always been the norm. You don't learn anything in school, anything except a bit of your own Thai language, and that's it. Yeah, it's so Americanization of Thailand. Yeah, I don't think so. And also, Thais are quite protective of their own culture. Buddhism, Thai language. Like there are laws, for example, when you have a sign outside your restaurant. Because I run a restaurant now, a little pizza business here by the beach. You pay when you put up a sign outside. You need to pay like a sign tax, and the sign tax is lower when you have Thai writing on your sign than if you have English writing. These are just like little examples of how they try to protect their language and their culture, which is a good thing. And another thing, we talked about this briefly before the podcast started. You asked me, like, David, are you on track to Thai citizenship by now? You've been here for God knows how long, 15 years. And I said, no, there is no track to Thai citizenship. I mean, technically there is if you know people and you have millions of Thai baht in the bank. But no, you have to renew your visa every year, no matter if you're married, if you have children, if you've held a job. There is such a thing as permanent residency, which you can apply for, but it's very rare and difficult, and yeah, basically you're not supposed to, and no one does. And yeah, it's scary because if I don't renew my visa or somehow it gets declined, then I have to leave, and then my family is here. It's they have a very protectionist like immigration policy, and of course, no one in the West makes any big fuzz about this, and they shouldn't. I mean, it's their own choice. But yeah, the whole narrative that these Western countries are so racist and they hate immigrants, and if you ever tried to immigrate to an Asian country, that's much more difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I know Thailand has a large Burmese refugee community, but so those people are just like you. They are never going to have a path to citizenship. They're just guests.
Yes, and if they're lucky, their kids might. Although it's funny, this barbecue place where I go to, where most of the staff is Cambodian, and I asked one of the Cambodian waitresses. I said, "So your kid is growing up here in Thailand. So what's the deal? Is she Thai now? Like, do they have sort of a birthright thing that they have in the U.S.?" And she said, "No. My kid's still Cambodian. They won't give it to her." So, damn, even then.
But your daughter is Thai citizen by virtue of her mother.
Yes, exactly. That's the only way. And theoretically, I could become a Thai citizen if I apply for a permanent residency and then take another 5 years and then wait another 10 years after that. And then, but yeah, what I hear from you basically need to work like in an embassy or be high up in a big company to be even considered for this. It's it's not like in Europe where you just move to Holland and then after 5 years, or if you get married, you get immediately you can work. Like that's another thing. If you're married here in Thailand, you're not allowed to work. You know, you can just sort of sit around and pay for things from your savings or something. It's very anti-immigrant, because again that would create lots of competition on the labor market, and their whole point is to keep labor cheap. So yeah, it's
What? Okay, so I know Thailand has all these vacation spots and all these expat communities. So these are people that they're not integrated into the Thai society in any way. They're either visiting as tourists or they're retired like your parents, or I know people that live in Thailand who are basically remote workers. They make their money other ways, not related to the Thai economy. So is that what's going on there with most of these expats?
yes, there is no integration. Like you can work in Thailand as a teacher, as I have for 12 years, um, but only professions that Thais cannot do, you will be granted a work permit, and then the work permit is only valid for that particular job. So you can't move to Thailand and become, I don't know, a garbage man or something. No, you will never get a work permit to do that. You can only get a work permit for doing stuff like teaching English that Thais can literally not do. So yeah, there's no integration, and it's the same thing with language. This is also a fascinating thing. I lived in Japan for a while. Is that most of the foreigners or expats or long-term residents in Japan speak Japanese quite well. Like this, like everyone who arrives in Japan does like an intense language course, and then yeah, the expat community. Chances are all the expats can speak Japanese pretty well. But in Thailand, absolutely no one speaks good Thai. No one. This is another strange thing. Like when I went to the U.S. for grad school, I went to Hawaii, and they have a Thai department there. One of the few places in the world with a full-fledged you can do a master's degree in Thai. So I studied Thai there. I figured I would go back one day. And when I came back to Thailand, I found out that literally no one else can read, or the foreigners can read and write Thai, or speak it, or pronounce the right tones, or whatever. So yeah, what I do now is as a sort of secondary job, I teach Thai to foreigners. I have a course that runs every 3 months, which is ridiculous because you need a foreigner to teach Thai in Thailand to other foreigners. Like, why is there no Thai person doing this? Why is there no language school? Because there aren't. There is simply no push, no incentive, no, like, a foreigner who speaks Thai is like a one in a million thing. Like, and not just like, I know how to order a beer, or, um, tell the taxi to take a left turn. No, no, I mean proper speaking, reading, writing Thai. Almost none. So it seems like both from the Thai side and from the foreigner side, there is just no willingness or intention to integrate. It's a very parallel. I mean, the foreigners would have a few Thai friends here and there, but that's it. Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. So okay, so Thailand, it's more developed than people would say. That you could get everything. It's modern. Bangkok's great. On the other hand, the skill level, the human capital investment is pretty low, because they want to keep labor cheap. Stay lower on the value chain, I guess, and no real immigration, pretty nationalistic, and also just like very parochial it seems, and they're okay with the expats not learning anything about their culture, and vice versa. They're not super interested. But I know that I remember when I met you, you were talking about, you have I think in Schopenhauer. I think Schopenhauer was your favorite philosopher back then. Am I remembering right?
Oh no! At that time, I think I was quite into Nietzsche, and yeah, I specialized in that time in philosophical Darwinism. So I did
Yeah,
like a reevaluation of social Darwinism, like Herbert Spencer and such.
uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah. I remember us talking because you were obviously,
Yeah,
biology, genetics, and such. So yeah,
yeah.
that was sort of. I think we spent a lot of time talking about those topics, and yeah, I've been wanting to also talk to you about this a little bit, because going to sound a little weird, but don't take it the wrong way. But what I noticed here, living in Southeast Asia, is that let's say the expression of the genotype, it seems to be really radically different than from, for example, Africans or you know South Americans, or I really find, especially when you go to some of the more rural areas, that in terms of like bone structure and skin type and skull shape, really that it's almost like you're looking at a subspecies. It's very fascinating, like the Southeast Asian. Like once you live here, you kind of get used to it. But in terms of like the spine and the straight back and the lack of like the back of the head, which is sort of flat, and then the location of the hips and the ratio between like leg length and torso, and then skin type. Like it's very funny when you live here and you start to notice that people are just really radically different from you. And I've wondered, you're doing a lot of study now, and what I can gather a little bit from your Twitter post is like there's some new discoveries being made, especially with like the contribution of like Denisovan genome in the air.
Uh-huh.
Like, what if we've approached it from the other side? What if we went from first we look at the phenotypic expression, and then from there we look at areas where certainly there must be a larger sort of divergence from, or a larger like variation, or maybe contribution of an extinct species of humanoids. Like, instead of starting from the genes, why not just look at reality, and you find like people here are really really different. Maybe you should look into that.
Yeah.
Like,
So that's I mean, talking about skull shape, I'm wondering, like, are you Dutch or are you German? But
yeah, I know it sounds odd, but it's just such a fascinating thing where, like my daughter, she would go to school, and then she would play with other kids, and then she is really really so different, like, which I've never felt. I've been to Africa before, and I've had like black friends, and I've been to like Mexico and things, and yeah, of course there are difference. You have like racial categories, but none of them I find such a huge difference as here in Southeast Asia, where really like bone structure, it's like completely off the charts different. And yeah, I just wonder.
yeah, yeah. One thing I would say. So, one issue with Southeast Asia is it seems like it's pretty clear. And I actually have a podcast that I did with Spencer Wells like 5 years ago now about Sundaland, I think. But we've developed and progressed even since. It looks like Southeast Asia uh, is the most speciose region of the world, perhaps even more than Africa, for humans, like say 100,000 years ago. And so there are at minimum two dwarf humanoid populations, one in Flores and one in Luzon in the Philippines. There's also, it looks like at minimum, two Denisovan populations, probably actually three. One in the Philippines, one in mainland Southeast Asia, and then one maybe in Australasia, in New Guinea or something, somewhere in that region, Wallachia. And then um, the last Homo erectus, which is descendants of Java man, I think you know, like is in Java, and those date to about 100,000 years ago. And it looks like there were probably an earlier migration of out of Africa people into places like Borneo. Partly we have like the issue is a lot of the people probably were actually in the savannah that is now south of Bangkok. It's under the water. But we obviously have sites and caves in the mountains in Borneo, and those probably date earlier than the main out of Africa wave that we are descended from. So you have all of these different populations. Some of them did make contributions. We know the Denisovans made contributions. It's not clear whether the dwarf humans could actually interbreed with modern humans. But one thing that happens when you mix with a deeply indigenous local subpopulation of your species is that you often absorb adaptations from that population to the local region. So some of the phenotypic things that you're observing in Southeast Asians might be holdovers from some form of Denisovan. The Denisovans that lived in the Altai and Tibet, we know that they were pretty robust, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the Denisovans in Southeast Asia were quite that robust. So there could be some differences based on that. Thailand in particular, Thailand and mainland Southeast Asia, there needs to be more research done. Uh, Partly because it's it has multiple layers of even like modern human so like the oldest layer goes back to people before the arrival of rice farmers about let's say like 4,000 years ago or so. They're very similar to Negritos, like in the Andaman Islands or in Malaysia, and so those people are about like 10 to 20% of the ancestry, but they were eventually overrun by Austroasiatic speaking farmers, probably ancestors of the Mon people and whatnot, who were eventually conquered by the Thai, who obviously came from southern China. But also, there's about like 10 to 15% of Indian ancestry that seems to date to 2,000 years ago in Thailand. And that's related to legends of Indian migration. It turns out those legends are not legends; they're actually truth,
Mm.
because it's pretty clear the genetics. But those kingdoms did not leave a written record. They probably had writing on something like palm leaves, not preserved, and so they didn't leave a written record. So we only have records of them mostly from Chinese annals. So there's like a lot of mystery there. The admixture and absorption of the more archaic populations of the older populations probably actually happened. Some of them happened pretty late in time, actually. As you know, Thailand's big, and when you have jungle and forest, there's a lot of places for people to hide. Also, as you know, there are mountains there. Just that there are mountains there, but if people in Thailand haven't looked at a map and known where Thailand is, there's gonna be a lot of my listeners that are not clear about how mountainous a lot of mainland Southeast Asia is. So I think that that's an interesting thing that we need to observe. Also, you were talking about skin color. It's interesting to me that Southeast Asians as a whole, uh, they're at the same latitude as tropical Africa, but they're not nearly as dark, right? So it shows you that the connection between complexion and latitude is not always so simple. Part of it might be that the forests give you shade cover, and also if you wear clothes all the time, you're not exposed to the sun nearly as much. That might be one hypothesis for why Southeast Asians can be not quite that dark at the equator, and people in the Americas are also exhibit that similarity. Singapore has a pretty big genomics facility and is trying to be a leader in the region. Southeast Asia as a whole is undersampled. I, I don't think it's for political reasons. That's why India is undersampled. I don't know what exactly is going on, but partly a lot of this stuff is driven by interest. In terms of genetic science and analysis, it's driven by interest from the local people. So, for example, Japan has a Japan Biobank. China is funding like postnatal sequencing of millions of newborns, like these sorts of things, right? Um,
Mhm.
I don't get the sense that outside of Singapore, people in Southeast Asia really care about genetics too much, but that's my impression.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like such a sort of bountiful garden of interesting traits, like because for example, like another thing about lots of um, ties is like the lack of like shoulder blades. Like the back is completely there are no shoulder blades. The shoulders are really sort of like a very compressed like rib cage, like a relatively small main body, and then very thin and long arms. Like it just seems like there is something going on. Is it a more recent adaptation or uh yeah, it seems like there's something going on there.
Well, I know that the Southeast Asian people actually do have some of them do have adaptations that make them very gracile and very small. People from where my family's from in Eastern India and Bengal have some East Asian ancestry, Southeast Asian type ancestry, and they are known to be shorter than other people in South Asia. And geneticists have looked and have said that that is partly due to just the fact that whoever contributed the East Asian ancestry to Bengalis was very short.
But then the thing, it's not just a length thing, because I can also meet like Thais who are my length, but just like the ratio of things,
Yeah,
like
the
torso, like, and then
Yeah.
long, thin arms, and
Yeah.
there's also such a thing as you'll notice, like which we call here, like among expats. I know it sounds kind of bad, but yeah, there's no other way of putting it. We call it like the Thai waggle. Like there is a sort of way of walking which you'll notice, which is shared maybe half of the people you meet. When they walk, they sort of kind of swing the hips outward, and it turns into kind of like, and clearly this is something that comes from the structure of the hips and the way. And yeah, it's just fascinating. There's something going on. Like they were adapted to squatting for long time in the rice fields or something. Or there's just, which I haven't noticed anywhere else in the world so distinctly. And yeah, another thing I wanted to ask you is the process of neoteny. You might have heard neoteny being sort of
Yeah.
an adaptation, like going from wolves to dogs, where dogs are basically like wolves, sort of stunted or stuck in their infantile, and yeah, I can't help but wonder when you look at certain traits of Thailand, mainly the sort of lack of violence and sort of easygoing nature, and the propensity sort of to copy things instead of trying things for yourself, then the lack of body hair. There are lots of signs where you can say that maybe it's a sort of an adaptation where some form of neoteny took place. Like it's sort of a younger
Yeah.
version of us. And I've always wondered, like, is there some sort of scientific or genetic base? Is there a way to find out? Because that would be a very quick way to affect a lot of changes in the phenotype, rather than selecting for
Yeah.
each individual trait. You just select for the neoteny, which is regulated by a relatively small amount of genes, and then you have a huge effect.
Yeah, so the neoteny thing is interesting. I don't. There's actually a lot of theory about it. I've noticed there's not that much study, and I think I know why. I don't think it has to do with political correctness. I think it has to do with the fact that a lot of genetic studies for traits are predicated on a grant that's tied to a disease, and neoteny is not a disease,
No.
right? No. In fact, it's the opposite of like a lot of diseases you would want to cure because it makes you look young and all that stuff, right? And so there hasn't been too much study. I know what you're saying. So one of the issues is I think this is something that you can like study from paleoanthropology and like just like looking at the skulls and whatnot. Older skulls in East Asia, and older as in like more than 10,000 years ago, in Northeast Asia, so in China, for example, they don't look like East Asian skulls. We know now from the genetics that they were ancestral to the later Chinese. So the particular racial phenotypic characteristics that used to be called mongoloid, with the narrow eyes, the high cheekbones, the round, the face, but also more subcutaneous fat, like which is a definitely neotenous trait. Less body hair, all these things. So the skull, obviously with the cheekbones and the eye socket and other things, it's recognizable. Forensic anthropologists can recognize East Asians from those, right? But they don't look like that often more than 10,000 years ago, which indicates that it's a relatively recent adaptation or that's a recent evolutionary change. And it's not clear to people why this happened. There's not a good theory. There hasn't been a study of the genetics, but when you're talking about neoteny and distinctness and phenotype of Southeast Asians, I think a lot of this is very recent. The people did not look like that during the Pleistocene, during the Ice Age. So something may be connected to, collective living in tropical climates, doing rice agriculture, has changed people's body plans in certain ways. And they certainly seem to have changed their skulls in terms of the way the skull is shaped and, the cheekbones and all these other things. So, for example, if you look at older skulls, people have told me like they look more like maybe Australian Aborigines or even
Hmm.
Europeans or Native Americans. They don't look like modern East Asians. And so the modern East Asian phenotype might be relatively late in a lot of ways,
Mm.
evolutionarily. And that might be why you're seeing, in evolution, we call it derived characteristics. Derived characteristics different from, say, Europeans or Africans, who are you know, have the basal characteristics, the ancestral characteristics in some way. These sorts of things are very confusing too, because our chin area is actually a ancestral characteristic for modern Homo sapiens, whereas the Neanderthal, like you know, chin that's like receding is actually derived. So like the receding
Mm.
chin kind of evolved apparently, whereas like the earliest hominids had stronger chins. So these things go back and forth. It's an interesting interesting telling like what is happening where. Like for example, straight hair is almost certainly a derived characteristic. It might be admixed from Neanderthals, KRT. That and some of these other genes associated with straight hair look like they have adoptive introgression possibly from Neanderthals. So the ancestral human type that came out of Africa 60,000 years ago probably had a pretty tightly curled hair, just like the Negrito populations in Southeast Asia today do. And the straight hair could be a recent development. Overall, I think you're observing a lot of interesting phenotypes. And the issue that I would say from the scientific perspective is not philosophically about the science, why we don't explore these. I think I have to go back with what I said. None of these sound like they're pathologies. They just sound interesting.
Yes.
When they're just interesting and they're not pathologies, it's really hard to get a grant to study it.
Yes. Yes. Which is maybe in some ways unfortunate, because it could definitely point you in the right direction. When there's smoke, there's fire. If we can see a huge phenotypic diversity or traits that are really quite spectacularly different, then that's where we should focus our attention. And it's just I've always
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, when you're talking about, you're a philosopher, so I think you're thinking philosophically about this. Instead of like being excessively reductionistic or fine grained, you're looking at more holistically in terms of, okay, there's like big organismic changes. Maybe we should go looking there because there's details that might also be interesting, which is and like relevant for disease. I actually think that that's actually true. Um, the problem is, obviously the way modern science works, and this is not how pre-modern science works, as you know, or not pre-modern, but pre-1950 science. The way modern science works is there's a process, and there's a bureaucratic review board, and all these things. And interestingness is less relevant than actionability or whatever. They're told to evaluate the grant applications based on. So, we've been talking a little bit about philosophy, and I want to close out our conversation going back to philosophy. It's kind of where we started all those years ago. And you're teaching philosophy in Thailand, or you were, you still are to some extent. What did you teach, and what was your experience with how Thais reacted to your teaching?
Yeah, well, that's twofold. First, I taught ethics on university level for sort of general ed Thai students, where reception was tricky. You try to get certain concepts across, but no one's really interested, and they don't really want to be there. And also, you're not. Yeah, you get sort of nudged from above. That that is also so funny. Is that there was a ethics professor, and I said, yeah, I'm going to teach ethics. And then he said, okay, good. So you're going to teach them how to be good people. And I said, no, that's not the point of ethics. The point of ethics is not to teach people a certain ethical value system. The point is to have them think about several systems and then analyze. And this is again the typical Thai approach to things. So ethics just means telling them what to do, and then they will copy it, and then they will do it. Like turn them into better people. You're an ethics teacher. That's your job. Make them better people. Make them nicer. And that this distinction between sort of academic study of ethics and ethics as sort of a practical course in how not to be an asshole or something. It's very interesting. And then later on, I moved to the high school level. I taught at the Swiss International School, and I taught. I was the head of philosophy there. And then I could, the Swiss education system is very great and different from other European systems in that they don't have standardized exams. The teacher creates the curriculum and then sends that to Switzerland to have it completely checked by an official council that does it for the whole country. And then they accept your curriculum and your exam, and then you give that exam to the students. So you have a lot of room for customization and for going into specific topics that you are more knowledgeable in rather than sort of a standard one. So when I arrived there, it's a lot of work, but it's also fun. I was like, okay, what do I want to do? So I was like, okay, we're gonna do some Plato, and then we're gonna read Kant, and then we're gonna, and then you just create your curriculum. We're gonna do lots of Descartes, and we're gonna focus on this and that, and a bit of epistemology, and then some ethics, and then we're going to do like a trolley, problem, and we're going to look at it from different perspectives. So that freedom, and also, that the Swiss education system, I have to say, it's really, really amazing. It's sort of the last of the Mohicans of like classic European education. Like, this freedom that they give to the teachers, or trust that they place in the teachers, that they're capable, rational human beings who know what they're doing and who can create a curriculum. It's also a matter of trust. Why do you have standardized exams? Because your teachers are all idiots, and you can't leave it up to them. This was great. And then the results were also mostly awesome because kids would be really interested, and you really go into depth and basically do a university course level course in philosophy in high school, which is
Yeah.
neat. Yeah.
Yeah. That sounds fun. And so, obviously some people, you were talking about your ethics course, people didn't understand what you're trying to do there. In terms of, this like, kind of Western, I think, Western philosophy, how does that jive with like kind of like the preconceptions of people in Thailand?
Yeah, this is tricky because most of the students at the Swiss school were like either half Thai or full foreigners. They're mostly like, because courses are taught in German
I see.
and then some in English. So yeah, that's a hard thing to. I can't really. We had a few Thai students, but they're also the the, the top of the elite of the high society. So they're not really representative of the Thai conception of things in general. But yeah, another example that I wanted to say that was so awesome is when you can create your own curriculum. I read I read Dawkins in school. I made them read The Selfish Gene,
Nice.
and
Yeah,
then
yeah, nice.
analysis of everything, coming from what is a replicator and then moving on. This is so cool. You can actually just blow their minds by saying, no, we are just protein shells to protect our gene, and the people are just like, what? Yeah, no, this you can really, do interesting stuff with students at a high school level if you're allowed to do that. Do you know of any school in America where like 16-year-olds read and analyze The Selfish Gene and read Richard Dawkins and really go through all the implications, where we study like, you know uh, sexual selection, and we study, we did things in class like, you know um, uh, uh, altruism like, okay, altruism, like, what is the source? Is it just because you are genetically related? And then we look at like colonies of ants and things. You really go into depth. And these are all, I've often said, like, the Selfish Gene is the most important book ever written. It's really truly perception changing stuff. Like,
Yeah, no, I
what
agree. I agree. I mean, I think in the US, like, yeah, you would not do that because also, like, even in the elite schools, Dawkins is now problematic, and so they wouldn't want to assign Selfish Gene just because of who Richard Dawkins is.
like, I wouldn't read the God Delusion with them, because that's just hammering, beating a dead horse, flogging a dead horse. I think that's the expression. Because yeah, God doesn't exist, blah blah blah. But the Selfish Gene, I don't. That's not controversial. It shouldn't be anyway. It's just
Yeah.
proper genetics, and also that's my field of study, is the ethical implications of a study of genetics. That's the most important. If there's any truth or any sort of unexplored area in ethics, it has to come from genetics. This is where there's still a lot of sort of terrain, lots of open ground, and
Well, I mean,
yeah,
you're lucky you're saying that on this podcast because I don't think my listeners are going to get triggered by that, but there's a lot of people that get like really worried, and I think maybe we should end it here because
yeah,
that's a whole different podcast. Maybe we should revisit talking about ethics and genetics and the intersection
I'd love
thereof.
to. Yes,
Uh, yeah, on another podcast, we'll follow that up later. We'll follow it up later, maybe in early 2025. That sounds interesting because you know, uh, it's not something I don't actually talk about too much because there's just so much of the science, right? But uh, you know, uh, the inferences made from science are very important, and we are living in the genomic age now, so it's time to start thinking about that sort of thing. Well, I really appreciate catching up with you, and obviously, taking your time out of your day to talk about your homeland and your new quasi homeland,
mm,
and your attempts to your adventures in being a teacher abroad from the U.S., abroad from your homeland. So it sounds like you've led a very interesting, exciting, and in general happy life since we last met in reality, in the flesh. And I hope to meet you someday in the flesh again, David.
yeah. Thank you so much for inviting me. It sort of came out of the blue, and I'm really happy that you contacted me, and I sort of jumped at the chance. So thank you so much, and it's been a great conversation as well. I hope our listeners enjoyed it. And yeah, whenever you have the time, please you know jump on a flight to Bangkok,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
No, I plan on going to Singapore at some point in the near future. So once I hit Singapore, I'll probably do a jump up to Bangkok, and then maybe I'll fly from Bangkok to Hanoi to get some of the original authentic pho.
yes.
All right, man. I will talk to you later.
All right, have a good day. See you.
This podcast for kids. This is my favorite